Hi there, and thank you for joining me for today's live reading of Fade into the Night, the fifth book in the Philly Heat series by Becky Flade, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Dulcet tones from bow and string created grace as music soared to the vaulted ceiling and images of horror panned across the wall. Blood and rose petals littered the champagne-colored carpet. Candles reduced to hardened puddles on occasional tables, their frozen drips streaked toward the floor. Every detail designed to draw the viewer's gaze to the dead woman's spread eagle in the center of the room, her hands and feet staked with metal tent posts. Her eyelids removed and her torso carved, she'd been butchered and displayed in the most gruesome definition of the word. One image transitioned into another, a macabre carousel. Close-ups of the damage to the body gave way to distant shots of the room taken from separate angles. As detailed and distressing as it was, it couldn't recreate the smell of death. Feces, urine, blood, and the sickly, sweet scent of roses mixed with the sandalwood from the scented candles and permeated the room. The faint odor of the initial officer's vomit wafted in from beyond the open door. He could show them, but they'd never know. The last photo, the room after the body was removed, filled the screen as the music faded to silence. Lights on. Special Supervisory Agent Noah Danes cataloged the expressions of the 30 Bureau cadets in the lecture hall. He punched back to the first photo, the full image of the room with the corpse showcased dead center. This is how Reston police found the body of Caitlin Jones. They were responding to a noise complaint. The music we just heard, Adagio in G minor, composed by Tommaso Albinoni, played on the stereo system at full volume. We asked them to secure the residence and advised them to touch nothing, not even the stereo, until we arrived to document the scene. You're seeing it as I did. What do you see? The second victim of the Beltway Romeo, a voice sounded from the back. Noah nodded. That's the name the press has given him, not law enforcement. The body of the first victim, Stephanie Jackson, was found in her Frederick, Maryland home. Because they have, annually, more than 4 times the violent crime of Reston, they were prepared to handle the scene there. Reston PD knew they were out of their depth and were familiar enough with the details of the Jackson murder to request immediate help to process the scene. Since then, the Behavioral Analysis Unit here at Quantico has acted as a judicial clearinghouse in this investigation. Who can explain what I mean, and extra points if you can tell me how we navigated the multi-jurisdictional morass? Hands shot up. Sharillo. One way to elude law enforcement is to change jurisdictions. Sharillo was a former military officer. What was euphemistically referred to as a door kicker, but he was smart and had excellent instincts. The BAU would bore him, but he'd prove a formidable field agent. Even in our digital age, communications between local law enforcement in different counties and differing states leave a lot to be desired. The Behavioral Analysis Unit both collects and disseminates information to various law enforcement agencies. It's kind of brilliant. As soon as Romeo crossed state lines, the FBI claimed jurisdiction over all his crimes. Good. Hicks? The young woman lowered her hand. She, like so many younger recruits, held a law degree. Extraordinarily intelligent, overachiever, destined for a career in government, politics, or maybe a judicial seat. She'd rise through the ranks in white-collar crime. Doesn't Romeo present as too intelligent to make the mistake of earning the FBI's attention? Yes, however, let's remember, by spreading his kills out, he makes them harder to link. It was a calculated risk. Though true, he didn't believe it himself. There was something more to this pattern. Speaking of, there are 8 victims to date. Each woman was single, successful, and upwardly mobile. They held powerful jobs in the capital and lived in communities accessible by the Beltway or the Northeast Corridor. As fresh evidence is discovered, we refine our conclusions and VICAP is updated. For those of you who may not know, although by now you should, VICAP stands for the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program. It enables local law enforcement agencies to collect, enter, and analyze their own violent crime information. It facilitates the identification of similar cases on a regional, state, and national basis. As in all things, it's only as good as the information added to it. He nodded and clicked on another photo. What else do you see? He tortures them, removes their eyelids, and forces them to watch what he's doing to them until they die. What can you extrapolate from that, Buono? Marguerite Buono was the star of her class. She excelled in every aspect of her training. Ambitious and intelligent, she'd become an exceptional field agent. The behavioral analysis unit was her endgame. It would be an awful fit. She saw the BAU as a means to an end, the quickest way to make a name for herself. She wanted fame, and she'd step on anyone who got in her way. Their pain is his goal. Perhaps he considers their death a mercy or a gift in the end. Is there anything else from the scene supporting the theory? Mikkel. George Mikkel was Buono's polar opposite. The slideshow didn't affect Buono emotionally. Mikkel, however, looked nauseated. He barely passed the obstacle course, and his firearms training was a lesson in humiliation. The young man was brilliant. If he passed the academy, he'd perform well in the behavioral analysis unit. There are no petals under the body. He doesn't set the scene, the candles, the flowers, whatnot, until after they're dead. It's a funeral, not a seduction. Excellent. Beltway Romeo is a misnomer. This man is a serial predator. There is nothing romantic about it. His cell vibrated in his pocket. Noah glanced at the clock. He had them for a few more minutes. Jeremy, what do you see? And what does it tell you? The victim's body shows massive damage, but no defensive wounds. He took her by surprise. Autopsy report shows a hard blow to the back of the head likely caused disorientation or loss of consciousness. Because of swelling and bruising, it occurred hours before death. It's a blitz attack, Buono interrupted. The suspect breaks in, waits for the victim to come home, uses an immediate, unsuspected, and overwhelming application of force to subdue them. Usually, a blitz attack shows a chaotic, antisocial perpetrator. However, the scene shows high organization. Excellent deduction. Don't interrupt again. Noah clicked to another photo. Toxicology test results were positive for ketamine at a level high enough to suggest the victim suffered conscious sedation. The coroner believes she couldn't move or speak, but was aware of what was happening. The drug's availability in clubs, on the street, and other illegal markets makes it nearly impossible to trace. To date, the crime lab has not been able to isolate any prints, fibers, or biological material not belonging to the victims and/or their family and friends. Yes, Mikkel? The only evidence law enforcement has is the profile? Not even. A profile is not evidence. It's an assessment. Conclusions on behavior are deduced from physical evidence and subject to interpretation. They are used as an investigatory tool only. Members of the behavioral analysis unit can be called to testify as experts in psychology and criminology by the prosecutor. They can and often are also called by the defense. Former members of the unit are often contracted to provide contrasting and as valid an opinion on the same set of facts. What's the point then? Caldwell asked. A bright young cadet with authority issues, he would be a nightmare for whatever field office he landed in. The behavioral analysis unit is broken into separate divisions based on the field of study, including, but not limited to, serial crimes. We consult all levels of law enforcement and assist in both investigations and interrogations. He set the remote on the podium as his phone vibrated again. Knowledge is power. That's the point. He looked from face to face, registered different levels of intrigue, disgust, and boredom. His course was mandatory. Many cadets wouldn't be there if it wasn't. He preferred intellectuals to the ambitious. Profilers didn't bust through doors. Their work was academic. The analytical thinking he taught here would serve them in the future regardless of their post. Each of you has been assigned a different case file. Study them and prepare a detailed preliminary profile. Submit in person or via email no later than 2 weeks from today. The files you have been assigned are currently inactive. The perpetrators have been caught and prosecuted. Do not cheat by Googling. I'll know if you have. Bounce ideas off each other. Profiling is often a collaborative effort. The Beltway Romeo is an open investigation. Everything you've seen and heard today is to be kept in the strictest confidence. Violation of confidentiality is cause for expulsion. Have a good day. Conversations filtered to him courtesy of the lecture hall's acoustics as his students filtered out. They ranged from intellectual discussions on the Beltway killer to a debate on where to get the best hot wings. His cell vibrated again. He pulled it from his pocket and checked the display. Doyle Murphy, the liaison between the police department and the new behavioral analysis unit satellite team in Philadelphia. The satellite team was Noah's pet project, 2 years in the making, but the Beltway Romeo had absorbed all his attention for close to a year. We need you, Doyle launched without greeting. I'm looking at the body of a 32-year-old woman without eyelids and the obvious signs of torture. What's her name? Elise Dietrich. Rose petals? And classical music. Looks like your Romeo is in Philly. Noah checked his watch. He could make the 1:10 train, be in Philadelphia in roughly 3 hours. How long can you hold the scene? A tall, slender man with a military-precise posture and a penchant for expensive suits, Noah exited the rideshare sedan. His appearance reflected the cool composure which, along with his sky-blue stare, had earned him the nickname Blue Ice in Quantico. Despite this, exhaustion rode him. Elise Dietrich's brick ranch was adorned with blooming blue wisteria and navy shutters. It looked rather ordinary, as though it wasn't a shell for horror. The curious and the press had abandoned the scene, but their presence remained in the trampled lawns, cigarette butts, and trash. Only one police cruiser and a detective sedan remained. A cupcake wrapper cartwheeled past the toe of his wingtips. Nothing ignites hunger like tragedy. Doyle stepped out of the building. His red hair was disheveled, as though he'd run his hands through it over and over. He looked smart in denim paired with a ribbed turtleneck under a cashmere blazer, in direct opposition to his wild hair and tired eyes. Noah crossed the yard. Thanks for coming. I'm sorry I couldn't hold the scene any longer. Coroner has been through and gone, as have the crime scene techs, both yours and the locals. I documented as much as I could before I lost control of the scene. Doyle held the door open. The smell assaulted Noah first as he entered the residence. Muted, as it had been hours since the body was removed, contaminated by the scents of many responders, dirtier from the fingerprint powder, blood trails were ruined by foot traffic. It had been spread in parallel lines across the carpet by the wheels of a gurney and other equipment, confusing what happened and where. I'm sorry I couldn't get here faster. There were signal issues in the Northeast corridor, trains were delayed, and my train was stuck between 2 stations. Utterly frustrating, as I could have driven and didn't, as the train should have been faster. Thanks for trying. I'm not sure what information you can glean from the scene at this point. Doyle frowned. It's a mess. I'll get more from the photos you took and the forensic reports, he agreed, but if possible, I prefer to see it in person. When I review the photos and reports, I can recreate it in my imagination. I took some videos with my phone. Noah nodded absently. Good. Video will help. Despite the taint of law enforcement, the darkest pools of blood told a story of their own. Rose petals trampled and soaked in blood, crushed underfoot by whom he couldn't know. Candle wax puddled and frozen in time on various surfaces. He flicked on the stereo. Bach's Air on the G-string boomed from the speakers. Same song playing at the cruise scene, Victim 4. First time he's repeated the song. Noah made a note on his phone. Does it mean something to you? It means something to him. Noah shut the stereo off. You know how they say the devil's in the details? Doyle nodded. A more apt statement would be, we catch the devil in the anomalies. I've had enough of this room to last a lifetime, Noah. Doyle's disgust was obvious to an untrained eye. Noah's experience saw deeper, understood the scars such scenes could leave on noble souls like his friends. I'll wait outside for you. Let me know when you're done and I'll drive you wherever you want to go. I'm done now. He stepped around the sea of congealed blood, placing his feet so as not to pollute the scene further. Doyle locked and secured the door with tape. The patrol car had left while they were inside. He walked beside Doyle to the unmarked car, which was so nondescript everyone would assume it was an unmarked police car. Are we still in Philadelphia? See the stone 3-story there? He pointed. They're not in Philadelphia. We are. The house was Elise Dietrich's closest neighbor. The back of her pretty ranch faced their rear yard. City border runs along the property line between the two parcels. And if he'd chosen a victim who lived 1 block over, Noah opened the passenger door, looking over the roof at Doyle. The Lower Moreland Township Police Department would have responded. Noah absorbed the repercussions. Pressure from law enforcement could have pushed Romeo to change hunting grounds. 1 block over, and he'd have avoided Philadelphia detectives. Not unreasonable to assume it may have avoided federal attention altogether. Instead, he chose a victim in Philadelphia, not Baltimore or Boston, but Philadelphia, where the behavioral analysis unit had a new presence in the local field office. Romeo was too smart not to have researched this, not to be aware of the implications. He wasn't trying to escape law enforcement. Why the deviation? Who was Elise Dietrich? He waited until they were both buckled and Doyle started the ignition. How'd you get on this? The victim worked at a Friends Select school, a private Quaker school in Center City. Her boss is married to a high-ranking officer in the police department. When Dietrich no-called, no-showed and didn't answer her phone, a call was made to the 7th District captain to do a public safety check. The responding officers could hear the music when they got close, see the carnage through the window. They called it in and then contacted homicide. Noah smiled, understanding. Xavier. Detective Xavier Knight was a good friend of both men and a canny cop. They'd do well with him on the investigation. As though reading his thoughts, Doyle spoke. He didn't catch it, but heard enough to call me. I called you. If we need him, I can make a request. Noah nodded. With the crime scene behind them fading from sight, the adrenaline of a new scene, the possibility of uncovering evidence, his irritation at the delays also faded. And a deep-rooted exhaustion filled in the now empty spaces. He'd worn the fatigue like a death shroud for months and knew its name was failure. If it's not too much trouble, could you drop me at my place? I'm exhausted. Doyle laughed. I'll take your word for it as you look fresh as a daisy. What's your gut telling you? Something's not right with this one. It feels off. As the single homes with large yards gave way to shopping centers and crowded blocks, Noah mulled. No, this one is different. This one is how we'll catch him.